Slash chords. Maybe you've heard of these. Maybe you've seen them already. It's a letter with a slash and another letter. Very simply put, this is simply a chord on the first part in front of the slash, and after the slash is a bass note. So it's really just saying this is a specific chord with a very specific bass note. This is a composer's tool to basically say, I really want to show you this relationship. I want to show you what this chord sounds like over this bass note. Okay? So that's basically what it is. Boom. We're done. But if you think about it, there are probably a lot of different chords we could use on this side and probably a lot of different bass notes we could use on this side. The answer is pretty massive. If you look up the question, how many chords are possible, I think the current answer is 4,017. Is that correct? I don't know. I really actually don't care. But let's just say that is correct. 4,017 possible chords. And then bass notes. Well, there are 12 notes in the 12-tone system, so that seems like all the bass notes we could ever use. 4,017 times 12 is 48,000 plus, right? So slash chords, very simple idea. The results of building those, the permutations, really huge, giant, mysterious bucket of 48,000 chords that I'm never going to learn. As guitar players, and specifically as maybe songwriters using the guitar to compose, we need to understand how to use slash chords. And so we are going to focus on the method rather than the results. Welcome back to the channel. My name's Chris. Today you will learn about slash chords. I'm going to explain what they are, although I feel like I already have. It's a chord and a specified bass note. Boom, done. I'm going to show you how to find them and build them on the guitar. And the way we're going to do that is by using a serious constraint. We're only going to use diatonic bass notes, in other words, all the notes that are available in the key of A. And we're going to use a single chord, an A major chord, just to keep the variables down so we don't find ourselves in the deep side of the pool. We're going to stay on the kiddie side of the pool, shallow water, one chord, 7 bass notes, just so we can start getting the method. Then I'm going to show you a couple of examples from popular music where slash chords are like really necessary to get the song across, like showing you some results of like how folks have used slash chords to really make a statement about that bass note and that chord. Like, this is exactly what I want you to hear. Let me show you how it works. Okay, slash chords. Let's get them on the neck. Let's see how they work and start listening to them. Before we get started though, I just want to say there are 2 broad categories of slash chords. One's simply an inversion, meaning that the note in front of the slash is actually a note from inside the chord. In other words, the bass note comes from within the chord. And if the chord's a triad, it's got a root the 3rd or the 5th. That means that this bass note is probably the 3rd or the 5th. That's just an inversion of a chord. And of course that also happens with 7th chords and bigger chords than triads, but that's the first type of slash chord. The second type of slash chord is where the chord is independent of the bass note. In other words, the bass note cannot be found inside the architecture of the chord. We're going to cover both of these. Now, we're going to really constrain this. We're only going to be looking at A major and a single major triad, which is going to be A. Because what we want to do is really understand the method and how to build them and then start hearing them. We're going to stay on the kiddie side of the pool and not dive into the 48,000 chord side of the pool where things are scary and there could be sharks and sea monsters there. We're just going to stay focused on the method. Okay, before we get going, I just want to show you an example. If you think of a chord progression, those are the first 3 chords to Freebird by Leonard Skinner. G, D, E minor. Sounds pretty good, right? The bass player doesn't play D when the chord changes to D. The bass player plays F sharp. The bass player goes like this. That's a very important part of the song. That descending bass line. That second chord isn't a D, it's D over F sharp. And without that chord, it really doesn't sound like Freebird, right? There's a very good example of a slash chord being used, right? There it is. Landslide by Fleetwood Mac is the same type of thing. That bass note is important. Without that bass note, the song really doesn't have the same feeling. It doesn't portray the same sonic personality. So those are slash chords as well. Okay, now we're going to just, again, constrain ourselves to one thing. The key of A and a single chord, A major. And this is so we can just understand the method and not have to worry about the giant pile of solutions. So we're just going to play this A chord. If you think of your A major chord, the G, B, and the E string of that voicing of your A major bar chord are basically an A triad. And that is 3/5 root. We're going to use that triad, we're going to play that chord, and then we're going to alternate through every single note in the scale as a bass note. And we're going to see what each one of those slash chords looks like. Okay, the first one up is A. We don't really need a slash chord for A over A. That doesn't make any sense. So this is just an A chord. A over the root. The second note in the scale is B. So let's listen to A over B. That's A over B. I'm just going to take a moment. That's the 2 right there. If you're familiar with sus chords, first of all, if you're not familiar with suspended chords, here's a great video on just suspended chords, how they work, how you build them. I'm just going to take a moment outside of slash chords and just review our suspended triads here. Here's the suspended cadence is basically replacing the third with either the 2 or the 4. Think of Free Fallin' by Tom Petty. That's actually in the key of D, but you see what I'm saying. So suspended second, suspended fourth. The reason I do that diversion is when we go back to the B over A, suspended sound coming from the second is what makes this chord sound like it does. Like, whoa, what? Something's happening. Sort of craving some resolution, but I'm not too worried about it. It's not a bad sound. It's a nice suspended sound. It's because the second is in the bass. Okay, back to the task at hand. Our third note in the key is C sharp. So here's A over C sharp. Now, C sharp is actually already in the chord. C sharp is already in the chord. So this is an inversion. This is really third in the bottom, you could think of it that way. Pretty stable. Not very suspended, feeling pretty stable. The next note in the scale is a 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and is D. So here's A over D. There's that suspended sound again. It's because this is the 4. And remember, in our suspended cadence is either the 2 or the 4. Even though we have a third in this chord already, this bass note is our 4. It's giving everything that suspended sound. Makes me want to shake the guitar a little bit. It's pretty nice. The next note in our key is the 5th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 happens to be E. Now E is the 5th. This triad already has an E in it. So this is an inversion. A over E is really just 5th in the bottom. Very stable. Very stable sound. The next note in our key is 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and is F sharp. Here's A over F sharp. Another sort of interestingly suspended sound. 6 in the bottom. A over F sharp. The last one we've got here in our diatonic progression is 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and is G sharp. A over G sharp. Now G sharp is the 7 in this key, so this really comes across as an A major 7 chord. 7 on the bottom. So this is really an inversion of a 4-part chord. Triads being root 3, 5, 4-part chords being root 3, 5, 7. So there are all of our diatonic bass notes over a single chord. A over A, don't really need to say anything about that. A over B, A over C sharp, A over D, A over E, A over F sharp, and A over G sharp. So that's how to build them, right? There we are, just taking the diatonic bass notes and putting the A chord on top of them and just watching those bass notes move around and listening to the sound. I want to show you one more example from Wind Cries Mary by Jimi Hendrix. The intro to that song sounds like this. So these are just 3 chords, E flat, E, and F. But if you play it like that, or this, or this, it doesn't really sound right because these slash chords are making a difference. This is E flat, and each one of these voicings, initially we have the 5th on the bottom. And the next time he plays it, he plays the 3rd on the bottom. This makes the part. These variations, these slash chord variations, make the part happen, because what you're hearing now is this. Another very interesting display of slash chords being critical to having the part sound correct. These are a composer's way of saying this sonic relationship, this over this, is important for me to let you hear right now. This is the sound I want you to hear. That's what slash chords are all about. Okay, there they are, slash chords. Pretty easy to understand, right? A chord with a specific bass note. We just used the A major scale and diatonic bass notes over a single chord just to dip our toes in and see how the method works. Now that we have that method and we've got a couple of examples, we can now go forward and say, well, if we're going to, come up with a chord progression, maybe there's a slash chord I could throw in there to tie these 2 chords together. That's really what they're all about. Okay, I hope you find this interesting. I've tabbed it all out. The tabs are on Patreon, and that's linked below in the description. Head on over there if you'd like the tabs, or if you'd like to show your support for the channel. That's really the best way, and thank you in advance. If you're a composer, if you're somebody who writes songs on the guitar or wants to, slash chords are going to be a really good tool to have in your box. So I hope you enjoy this. I hope that slash chords are interesting to you and you can start experimenting and you find some really good results. Slash chords can be a very, very valuable tool in your toolbox. All right, I'll see you next time.